What a weekend we had in college football. Another great one. One for the ages, it feels like. So many upsets, so many teams were on the ropes. Other teams were smoked by other teams. Only fitting to discuss it for just a little bit, and we got some week 4 college football predictions this week. And the matchups this week are really great again. I mean, we have one, two, three, four. We have 4 ranked top 25 matchups. So before we get to that, let's recap some of the highlights and the takeaways from week 3 of the season. Now, what I thought, as I broke down Saturday, I was limited to 2 takeaways. First one, did Ole Miss basically hand Alabama the national championship on a silver platter? And the second takeaway I took was, did Florida State's defense practically give Lamar Jackson the Heisman Trophy? Now, the obvious answers to the questions would be no and no. However, the first one, whether if Alabama was just pretty much handed the national championship, it's honestly a strong possibility. I mean, let's just see that who Alabama still needs to play that's actually good. I mean, they could have a chance of losing against Arkansas, depending on how good Arkansas does. Maybe Tennessee, but I'm not really too confident in Tennessee to beat Alabama, as just by what we've seen so far out of Tennessee. They're just not as dominant as what everyone was anticipating. Texas A&M, sure. I mean, I think my Aggies have a chance in that one, but the thing is, can the Aggies get the wins before Alabama? Because if they do, which I don't even know if they can, because they never been able to do it before, but just imagine if it's Alabama versus Texas A&M when they're both undefeated when they play each other this October 22nd. Not only could that game not only have SEC championship, not like an SEC championship berth on the line, it could also have college football playoff implications. But yes, the SEC is a gauntlet. But Ole Miss did in that game exactly what I said they had to. I just basically gave out 2 keys for Ole Miss. The first one was to take advantage of the first quarter. They pretty much took advantage of the first quarter. They had an early lead, and they basically took advantage of that, and it gave them momentum into the second quarter. And they had a massive lead at halftime, 24-3. They had a 24-3 lead at some point, but then Alabama started to get back into gear as they were only trailing 24-17 at the half. So basically, Ole Miss didn't do the second key that I said, is to hold that lead and play all 60 minutes. What Ole Miss probably did is they kind of got too jumpy as they were leading at 24-3. Any other team would have gotten jumpy. I mean, we saw it in 2012 when Texas A&M was leading Alabama 20-0 at the end of the first quarter. Alabama kind of climbed their way back into that game. But at the end, A&M was focused. They were more focused. They took advantage of Alabama's turnovers and turned them into points. Although the first upset that pretty much happened was Louisville over Florida State. Now, the joke's on me because I put Florida State in the championship game matchup against Alabama, of course, in the preseason. If you actually want to see that, it's there. I mean, it's still there. I'm not going to be a coward and delete it like most people probably would. I'm not going to do that. I mean, if you want to laugh at it, you can. I mean, you'll have to find it, though. I mean, it's only got about maybe 115 views, something like that. But if you really look at the final score being Louisville winning 63-20, it really wasn't. I mean, based on the facts and based on if you actually saw that game, it should have been about 63-10. Maybe I'm even going to say 63. I'm going to say even 63 to like 7. I mean, I'll go as far as saying that. Florida State just looked completely weak. I mean, that has been like the worst I've seen Florida State in several years. Probably the worst ever under Jimbo Fisher, and probably maybe the worst in Florida State school history. Which, in fact, that loss was actually the worst in school history. So that was basically the worst game Florida State has ever played. Now, Off to this big upset. North Dakota State upset Iowa. Now, I said North Dakota State was going to put up a fight, but I did not think that North Dakota State was actually going to win. However, it was that pick six early in the game that gave the Bison hope and belief that they can win the game. And Iowa just had their hearts broken on a last-second field goal. So the thing is, starting next year, that the Big Ten will not allow any teams to schedule FCS opponents for their non-conference games, in hopes that maybe it can create more implication for the playoffs early in the season. Because let's be real, do you really want to see? I mean, I'm just gonna use this as an example, but do you really want to see like Alabama play like FCS Charleston or whatever, when instead they could be playing a team like they could maybe play, I don't know, they could play Texas, or they can play Oregon, or they can play Stanford. But this is kind of another video for a separate time on whether or not the FCS is ruining the FBS football. Based on these teams wanting to schedule FCS teams throughout the first 3 to 4 weeks of the year, instead of actually wanting to get into a competitive thing. But that's another video another day. But the next part I have is North Dakota State has pulled off upsets before, like upset after upset. I honestly think that North Dakota State would be just fine in the Big 12. And there are some debates whether if North Dakota State would, if they were to join like a conference in the FBS, such as the Big 12, that they would get smoked in every other sport. Which, sure, maybe that could happen, but most universities only depend on one sport. Like Alabama, it's football. Let's see. Tennessee is usually football. Other than basketball is kind of up and down. Iowa's pretty much known for their wrestling, even though nobody really watches wrestling. At least I sometimes try to occasionally, but most people don't really watch wrestling. But still, it's still a valid point. Let's see. Boston University. I mean, they're known for their hockey, and Minnesota's kind of known for hockey too. And North Carolina's known for their basketball, although their football team is starting to evolve. And yes, there are teams such as LSU, Florida, Texas, Oklahoma that shine in other sports. However, if you give North Dakota State some time, they could recruit some players eventually. So maybe joining the FBS isn't such a bad thing for North Dakota State. Just wanted to put that out there. And kind of the next thing I want to talk about is Nebraska beating Oregon. Now, when I picked Nebraska to win, I actually was serious. I wasn't making a joke or anything. I knew that Oregon has lost town over the years. And we kind of saw that. Oregon quarterback Dakota Prukop, an FCS transfer out of Montana. Of course, I knew that was Nebraska's one advantage, was the home field. I will admit that Nebraska is probably the most loyal fans in all of sports. I will personally admit that. 350 consecutive sellouts. I will personally admit that, come from someone that just absolutely despises the Nebraska Cornhuskers. I secretly root against them every single week. But they have the best fans, not only in college football, but probably in all of sports in general. Anyway, back to my point. So, of course, I knew it was going to be hard for Oregon to win this game because Dakota Prukop is not even used to even more than 50,000, close to 50,000 fans. Because in the FCS, the most people you ever probably play in front of is probably maybe 30,000, 35,000 the most. And he couldn't just say he was unfazed, because he couldn't say that. Because remember what happened to the last Pac-12 quarterback that tried to troll the fan base or tried to call him out? 104,000 crazy Texan fans trolling Josh Rosen with a 50,000 chant every time he turned the football over. But that's a kind of a separate topic for a different day if it comes to it. I'm just saying that Dakota Prukop was probably nervous in that game. Although Oregon put up a great fight. Although what really hurt Oregon in that game was going for 2 points after every single touchdown. Because I even knew as soon as I saw Oregon going to because Oregon used to only do it on the first touchdown they scored, but then when they did it every time, I was watching this at a Buffalo Wild Wings with a couple of friends. Thanks for inviting me, Seth. I knew that if it did not come back to hurt Oregon in that game, it was going to later on in the season. So I think this is going to be a learning curve for Oregon. This is kind of a wake-up call for them to not be so overconfident and go for 2 every single time. So ultimately, that is one of the things that really cost Oregon the game. And also, what also kind of cost them was so many penalties on the last drive of the first half on defense. So many pass interference calls. Other things that may have cost them is Royce Freeman was injured early in the game. He did not return. So there was a couple things that went wrong for Oregon. Nebraska had everything right going for them when it mattered, and that was in the second half. Anyway, I think I am finished with the major points of the week. California upset Texas. Although I knew and said it was going to be an offensive battle, there'd be a bunch of points on the board. I told you high scores in the 50s. So anyway, on to the week 4 matchups. And as far as how my Heisman thing's going, I had Dalvin Cook in the preseason. But as far as it can go, I think the top 3 are personally Lamar Jackson, of course. Although there's still a long season to go. College football is a marathon, not a sprint. I would honestly put Christian McCaffrey, although many people think he got robbed last year. But honestly, you were either going to give it to Jarek Henry, who broke Herschel Walker's single season record, or Christian McCaffrey, who broke Barry Sanders' single season record. So it was basically pick your accomplishment and which one you thought was better. So nobody got really robbed. It was just an unfortunate happening of 2 players breaking records in their own separate conference. So let's put aside that this whole Chris McCaffrey got robbed. Let's just put that aside because that was last year. 2016 is a new year. He can still win it this year. He could easily lead Stanford to the cultural playoff and he can win it himself this year. So anyway. And first of all, let me just also include that my top 3 right now are Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey, and I'm actually going to go with JT Barrett. I've kind of liked what I've seen of JT Barrett so far. Anyway, on to the week 4 matchups. First one from Friday is on Friday night, USC versus number 24, Utah. I'm going to kind of pick Utah on this one, although it's a must-win for USC. USC usually does good in must-win games. So this is a must-win game for USC because USC cannot afford to start 1-3, especially with the gauntlet that they have to play later this year. Teams like Oregon, Notre Dame on the last game of the year, Cal, UCLA. So this is a must-win for USC if they want to even have a chance of going to a bowl game this year. Although I don't think USC can get this one done. I think Utah's offensive line is just so experienced. That's going to be the difference this one. Many have been saying that this is going to be the difference between Utah all year long is that experience of the offensive line. I think we're going to see how great it is. I'm going to pick Utah to win this one. I'm going to say 38-28. Although USC seems to win in must-win games. I mean, nobody expected USC to win it last year, and then they ended up smoking Utah, and they're number 3. So I'm going to pick Utah to rebound this year. BYU versus West Virginia. Now, these are two talented teams. This is probably a pretty solid matchup if you look at it. But I'm going to pick West Virginia to win this one. I just think the quarterback play of Skyler Howard and the running game of West Virginia, I think it's going to be the huge difference. I think we're going to see a pretty decent amount of points on the board. I don't think we're going to see like a high scoring, but I think West Virginia will end up winning this game. I'm going to say probably around. I'm going to say it's going to be close because BYU has had some close games this year. Their 2 losses this year have been close. So they have the talent to make it a close game, but I'm going to say West Virginia wins. I'm going to go with 45-35. So both the games so far have been 10-point margins of victory. So next one, another interesting one. Pittsburgh trying to come off a heartbreaking loss against Oklahoma State and North Carolina. Now last year North Carolina lost the opener. This year they lost the opener as well. Last year they made it all the way to the conference championship game. Could they do it this year? Maybe they still can, but I think James Conner, I think he's got a lot to prove this year. He's got to show a lot of people his talents. Comeback athlete of the year. I'm going to go with Pittsburgh in this one. James Conner, 3 touchdowns in this game. Elijah Hood, I think he's going to do good for North Carolina, but I just think Pittsburgh has a lot more to play for right now. All right, on to great matchups. Number 18 LSU versus Auburn. Must win for Auburn as well, in my opinion. Kind of like USC. Starting off the season 1 and 2 in the must-win games. Because if Auburn wants to make it to a bowl game, they have to win this one. But I don't think they can do that. I just think LSU is just way too much talent. I think LSU might figure out the quarterback play in this one. Although if I'm Auburn, I'm actually trying to look at stopping the quarterback more than stopping the running game. Because the running game will stop itself. I mean, we kind of saw Leonard Fournette kind of get stopped against Alabama last year, and then the wheels just fell off. I think if you get the quarterback, get whoever the quarterback's going to be, whether it's going to be Brandon Harris or Danny Elgin. If you stop the quarterback, you're going to make LSU just a one-dimensional team and have to rely on the running game. But I still think LSU's going to win this one. I just think Leonard Fournette is going to be too strong for Auburn's defense. Right, Oklahoma State versus number 16 Baylor. Now, I personally like this match, but I think we're going to see a lot of points in this one. I mean, Baylor has a talented quarterback in Seth Russell, talented wide receiver in Katie Cannon. I like for that hookup at least maybe 8 times in the game, probably for a solid maybe 120 yards, maybe a touchdown or 2. And I said Katie Cannon. I tweeted that Katie Cannon's going to make an NFL team really satisfied next year. And I think this is going to be one of those games that his draft stock will improve. I like Baylor in this one. All right, number 12, Georgia, who's been coming off some close battles, they've been having a hard time trying to get the job done, but they get the job done at the end, going up against an Ole Miss team at number 23, who felt like they should have won last week, but they kind of gave it away. So Ole Miss is going to look really angry in this one. I'm going to pick Ole Miss in this one just because I think Georgia's having a hard time finishing off games and going against an angry Ole Miss team. I think that's going to be the difference. I think the emotion of Ole Miss will be the difference. I like Ole Miss to win this one. All right, interesting matchup in the Big Ten. Number 11, Wisconsin versus number 8, Michigan State. Now, Wisconsin, quarterback Bart Houston is out. It'll be quarterback Alice Hornibrook at the quarterback position. We're not sure if Corey Clement's going to play this week. He was out against Georgia State last week. I honestly think this is going to be a really defensive battle game. I don't think we're going to see a lot of points on the board in this one. I think the difference is going to come down to which offense is the strongest. And I personally am going to give this one to Michigan State. I'm going to say a really low scoring game. I'm going to say 20-17 in favor of Michigan State. Number 19, Florida versus number 15, Tennessee. Now, Florida has won this rivalry matchup for the last 11 years. However, I think the streak is going to end. I like Tennessee to win this one in front of their home crowd. I just think I haven't seen enough in Florida this year to give me any evidential proof on why to pick them to beat Tennessee. I think this is the year that Tennessee finally gets that victory against Florida. And maybe that'll be a confidence booster for the rest of the year for Tennessee. Right. Two matchups left. Number 7, Stanford going up against UCLA. I think we're in for a competitive one. Although last year Stanford blew out UCLA. But I think it's going to be a little bit of a closer of a game. I think UCLA is going to hang in there for about the first half. But then in the second half, it's going to be all about Christian McCaffrey. I'm going to pick Stanford to win this one. All right, last matchup. Number 17 Arkansas versus number 10 Texas A&M. We kind of know where I'm going with this one. I'm going to pick Texas A&M to win this one. Although it won't really surprise you if Arkansas wins this one, because Arkansas the last 2 years, this game has gone into overtime, but Texas A&M has pulled it off both times. However, 2016 could be different. This is usually the game, usually the point in the year. This has usually been the turning point for A&M the last 3 to 4, for about 2, 3, 4 years. It's this game in particular. Texas A&M normally wins this game, but then they go on. They usually slide down. But I think the difference maker in this game is going to be that running game of Keith Ford, Travion Williams. I think those are going to be the huge difference makers in this one. So I'm going to pick Texas A&M to win this one. Although, I will say this right now. It will not surprise me if Arkansas beats Texas A&M. Because Arkansas has come so close the last 2 years. The third time could be the charm. Right, so that is going to do it for your Week 4 college football predictions and Week 3 season recap. Like and subscribe to the channel. We are so close to 400 subscribers. I can almost taste it. Share this video with your friends. Get your friends subscribed to the channel. We can use as many subscribers as we can. That's all I have for you. Have a great day, everyone. I will see you next time.